Sorry. No, you're Dragon. No, you're pretty.
I was just going to say that Dark really is just one of those players that you don't expect him to run into a roadblock this early on in the tournament, especially versus Trigger. If you look at this on paper, Dark is supposed to, in essence, run over Trigger, and this is supposed to be your Trigger going to the lower bracket and then having to fight it out over there or something. But Trigger, I do feel like, is able to pull out some really, really nice kind of upsets here and there. And I feel like individual series versus really top-notch players, that is where sometimes Trigger can find his stride.
I do think Trigger shows spikes of brilliance, you know? It's untapped potential that every so often gets to really show off. And I do think he's done it a few times even versus Dark. Their history is actually rather extensive for Trigger being a newbie in comparison because they play in so many open cups. And Dark does win every time. But I said it when looking at the bracket, I'll say it here. I think even though it's mostly one-sided as far as 2-0s go, the games can appear like this. Trigger actually does some pretty neat micro. He does a really solid first 5 minutes of the game. You think he's feeling good. You think he's performing at his absolute best, which I think could actually defeat Dark. And then Dark punches him in the face. And nothing that happened at the 5-minute mark really mattered. It was a 7-minute Nidus worm that really took him down. So I'm predicting that'll happen again. It's up to Trigger to get whatever he can in the early game, because Dark is looking a little shaky in this matchup in general in GSL, and then to actually carry through against Dark's inevitable aggression.
And I think that is not just versus Trigger, right? That is something that we just see from Dark. A classic tale for Dark where you say, what is Dark doing? Oh my God, he's falling behind. Okay, never mind. It didn't matter. You won anyways with this really wonky timed aggression. And I think even I talked to Trigger a little bit earlier on today. He came in nice and early on, was talking with Stray and a bunch of the other like North American Terran players. And he was saying, you know, it's Dark. I have to be ready for basically any kind of weirdness that Dark is going to throw at me because it's Dark. That's just what he does. He throws weirdness and weird timing attacks at you, and you just have to be ready for it at any given moment.
Yeah, I do want to speak a little more about Dark's GSL performance because he did have two Protoss matches, same Protoss, but he was really insistent on doing this Nidus worm all in, and it didn't work. And then, well, arguably it kind of worked, but then the game wasn't won. Then he did it again once he kind of reset the momentum, but he did it 3 times out of like 4 games versus stats. And that was really odd to me, especially the first time when he didn't actually win. So I don't know if that actually is indicative of perhaps a slightly less practiced Dark. You know, we were joking, but he's a father. He has more responsibilities. It is tough, even though he still eyes the grand prize of actually winning a world championship. Again, he won BlizzCon 2019. It is going to get even more difficult. So maybe that was a fluke. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe that was a very anti-stat strategy that finally worked. But, oh, well, you know what works as well? Fear Dragon giving links right onto that net.
Oh, that is painful. This is just certainly not supposed to happen right now. The Oracle pops on now, but 7 workers, 8 workers is already far too many for Trigger to lose at this stage in the game.
Yeah. That's a real offset there. You know, you think you got the 5 minutes basically to be normal, and then Dark is abnormal. So running right into that natural without any type of pit stop at the third to give some type of alert. It's obviously very appropriately timed with the Oracles. No.
Zombie Grub, this is not the start that Trigger was looking for.
Look away, Fear Dragon. Your NA boys are going down.
My Protoss heart right now is having a hard time, and it's going to lose a pylon as well. The third base will be safe. The Oracle is still here to defend against any remaining links, but there's not even that many links left over because they've already done the damage. They've sacrificed themselves for the greater good, and Dark is already in a phenomenal position in this game.
It's a good start, but I am exaggerating, guys. There's a chance that Trigger, of course, stabilizes. The worst thing about a start like that is letting it continue to happen. Being like, oh, I lost that, and then I lost that. Oh, of course, I was thinking about that, so I lost that as well. He can get back up on the horse. You know, it's not dramatic to say that, because Dark, of course, made lings, not drones. So the difference was kind of like he had to do damage with that, right? He's just gonna do the same thing again. This is what happens when you have a baby. You just do the same build over and over again.
You know, I have seen many parents, and when they get sleep deprived, they do seem to do the same thing over and over again.
I feel like there's a lot of people out there in the crowd that are like, yeah, I just have one build, man. It's way too hard to learn a new one. Oh, boy.
Well, we're going to see how Trigger handles this, because right now he's still just dealing with the lings running around. Where is the Overlord vision? There is an Overlord positioned inside of Trigger's main base, and it's not actually spotted right now. Oh boy.
Dark has won more games versus Protoss than Trigger has played versus Zerg.
That is certainly a stat representative of their careers right now.
Yeah. Again, old versus new, man, and Dark is not letting the newbie get any room to breathe, just hammering him with lings, and of course more lings from this Nidus Worm. The gateways aren't quite done. Charge has only just begun. Trigger hears that very ominous sound right in the main base there. Most ideal position ever. And there's a couple of pylons I see that could definitely be targeted.
Yeah, 2 of these pylons are going to be powering at least a couple of gateways and the Stargate, and potentially even the forge. So Trigger is going to have to try and hold his ground over here. Trying to also hold his ground at the third base, but not in range of the shield battery over there. The Queens are in such overwhelming numbers. What can Trigger do to stop this? There's spine crawlers going up in his main base, Zombie Grub.
Yeah. Dark actually did this outside of a third, which is even funnier, but bringing the drones, adding that little bit in, it does add a lot. The Queen's not necessarily great at killing something, especially if there's overcharge. You're not going to kill anything. Yeah, back away from that. But, you know, it's consistent. And then the spines add in. It is a good mixture, even as we get to more of a mid-game state. 7 minutes here, Queen Spine Crawler Rush. Oracle's trying to help their best with the ability. You go, Oracle. It's like they're being supported by that shield battery.
Yeah.
There's a chance that Trigger can clean this up, but it's a matter of how ugly it's going to be after.
It's worth mentioning, Dark is on 44 workers right now, so if Trigger just got to clean up from here, he doesn't lose too much of his important tech. If he manages to finish +1 weapons, find some ability to counterattack or just keep Dark in check, there is a chance for him, but Stargate is going to end up falling. The Spine Crawlers are burrowing in a more aggressive spot. These charge lots have nowhere to go.
Oh my gosh.
And this is looking so tough to break through, but can he do it?
Speaking of things like killing things, those Zealots go up against a brick wall of Queens. And he's even, occasionally pulling back the Lings to make sure they don't take unnecessary fights, because these Queens aren't dying. There's so many of them with transfuse energy. It's actually insane how many Queens he has. 17 of them, guys. Another backup Nidus Worm in case he needs it as well. And it's been a long battle because Queens, but I think it is absolutely going Dark's way at this point.
Yeah.
It's too much. It's just too much. Initially, there was a chance if he could gather enough Zealots and then get a really good, surround, but he was stopped at every turn.
The unit counting station really does tell the tale. 3 Adept, 3 Zealots, and 3 Sentries. That is not going to be able to hold against that many Queens right now as gateways continue to fall. It does look like Dark's going to pull back ever so slightly. Shield battery overcharge will keep Trigger alive for a little bit longer, but the aggressive Nidus Worm blocking off the pathway for the Adepts, because at this point, Dark is just ready to use Nidus Worms as force fields.
That's crazy. He's like, these force field things are great. Give me this.
Yeah. And I don't know if there's any Sentry force field energy right now, but those Baileys are going to be going in on top of that army. Sentries, a handful of them do manage to survive, but the probes most certainly do not. Dark now doubling the supply of Trigger, almost tripling at this point, and he's going to take game number 1.
You can see why Trigger was in that till the very end, though. Every time they were like, this is dramatic. This looks like it's really bad. The Nidus Worm screams on the main base, and everyone's like, well, that's just a GG, isn't it? It really wasn't, actually, even as potent as that looked. If you can get enough charge lots, charge a fairly fast upgrade, I guess, you get 20 charge lots saved somewhere, because he is still mining. It was the gateways that were the problem. You come in with more of a surround of any type rather than that horrific choke they went through, and it's, they're actually going to kill some Queens. But it was just, everything went together so well, and I do appreciate how both of them really tried to focus in on how they could abuse the SimCity, offensively and defensively. But at the end of the day, Nidus Worm remain unexpected right before the gateways are done. It's always going to be tough to hold, and he could not consolidate enough of his army.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning, like you were saying, how close that was, given not only did the Nidus Worm go completely unscouted, but also just 8 probes that went down that didn't necessarily even need to go down. Those are not expected or necessary probes for Dark to get to do this kind of attack. But despite that, Trigger made this look so close as it was.
Yeah.
So I have to commend Trigger in the sense that he managed to do a really impressive defense there for quite a bit of time. But Dark still just got way too many little victories that added up to a big one.
Yeah, and obviously the Baneling edition kind of cemented it. So he was already pretty much dead by that point, but the Banelings were the real nail in the coffin. Very unfortunate, too, because if you stop that Nidus Worm, there's a bit of a gamble, right, from Zerg players. They can try to Nidus Worm in the main base, and if they're found, the jig is up. And then any other Nidus Worm relatively close to the Protoss is hard to get up. So you maybe sometimes you see Dark not even bother. He's like, I can't do it. I think he's going to see it. Let me just go on the front, and that can work as well. But then if you only kill the third base, for instance, that's not enough damage. So he kind of has to go for the throat. So if Trigger had just seen the Nidus Worm and gotten a cancel, easier said than done, obviously, that would have actually ruined Dark, I'm pretty sure. That's just like the weirdest game after, but it is what it is. Nidus Worm got up. Trigger, unfortunately, getting the good old Dark versus Foreigner treatment. You know, get him out of there quick.
That he did. We're going to be starting the next game on Site Delta down here in the bottom right-hand side of the map on top of the red Zerg player from Talon Esports. He is Dark, sitting up 1-0.
Heck yeah. In the top left for Basilisk, he is Trigger.
I'm a little worried for Trigger coming into game number 2 just because this is one of those situations where experience plays a big effect as well. When you're down 0-1 and you're playing on that main stage in the situation, Trigger's been getting more and more of this experience over the past year or so, but has he accumulated enough that he's going to be able to move into game number 2 and still play his best after that last game, after honestly probably a very frustrating game for him?
Yeah, but I feel like I've said that a lot for Trigger, so I think he's getting better every time.
I think
with it. Yeah, because I think that was his absolutely major first problem back when he first came in, right?
Yeah.
Understandably so, not in the competitive field like for the 8 years extra that Dark has over him. But he's been working on it. Then there was offline, and that is a different environment. That is a different challenge. So you got to get used to that as well. And then there is, I think, just the acceptable fear that is facing one of the world's best players, best Zergs. So you do have to talk about his mentality after a game like that. But he has really proven to be a well-rounded professional gamer. So not just good macro, good micro, good strategy, but good fortitude, like mental fortitude, right? Doesn't get exhausted over long days at a MLG bracket or whatever back in the day. So I'm not the most worried, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think you're absolutely right. He has actually made huge strides in that regard over every single event that he's attended, whether it be the DreamHacks or the ESL Opens, or whether it just even be the Home Story Cups and whatnot.
Yeah, which are also, they can actually be kind of fine, man. Yeah. So Trigger certainly has built up the experience. We are talking about a 4-year career versus a 12-year career.
Yeah.
Math. Yeah, Dark was actually there from the very beginning, but for all intents and purposes now we'll call 2012 the beginning.
Yeah, that's very fair. I see that 2012 he played in the GSL Season 5, looks like.
Heck yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Just
way back on Slayers. Wow.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. So, when I kind of laughed at Trigger's stat of like not having as many games played as Dark has won, it obviously wasn't to belittle the newcomer who's now 4 years in, and we still call him a newcomer. It's just
annoying.
A rare length of time and discrepancy between players that a lot of esports would not be able to have. They haven't been around long enough.
Yeah. Adept's going to be microed over here on this side of the map. He does let the Shade finish, attacks the Queen first, but missed an opportunity to hit some of those drones. Manages to find a second drone, but an Adept getting surrounded, picked off the second Shade. No chance of that finishing. 2 drones for 2 pros, but it was 2 Lings that got 2 pros.
Yeah, exactly. The Adepts were obviously way more of a cost.
Yeah.
So not an ideal start for Trigger. I think as long as he can get a solid macro foundation for the first...
Okay, that could have been very annoying.
I don't want to jinx it.
Yeah.
For the first 5 minutes, it'll already be a little bit tighter. I think you could tell that he was ready to get back up after the disaster of losing the Oracle. He was like, okay, just focus up, 3 bases, get my gateways. I'm good, right? And it was just because of what a nice one build that he was cut so dramatically short. So you give it a little bit of a start here. So worried he was going to cancel that. And check out for more Nidus Worms. Don't think that can happen again in that fashion. Trigger's actually going to be able to finally show what he can do, because that last game was hardly a showcase for him.
No, it really was just mostly reacting to what Dark was throwing at him. And, well, this time he has that wall fully completed. He has enough units to try and defend that 3rd base against this very, very small number of Lings, and Dark is not going for some kind of massive all-in in that regard just yet.
Yeah, just yet.
Just yet. I always have to say that with Dark, just yet.
Yeah, this is very deja vu. I'm like, well, it kind of looks like he's setting up for the same thing, right? There's no safety roach more, and there's no fast evolution chamber for like a fast +1 build. It is just droning and then a lair and maybe a lot of Lings. The drones, I think, have already gone past the point of the Nidus Worm, though. So evolution chamber is going to be added on. It's not going to be... You know what? I'm not going to say it's not, because Dark is the type of guy who is I think, a feelings player.
I'll do it again.
Yeah, and that. He's like, you know what? I think you are weak. I wasn't planning on it, but I think I'll just kill you.
Yeah, I absolutely could see him throw something like that out. So we'll wait and see. But Trigger is definitely, most certainly, going to be able to get further into his game plan than he was able to last game. We already see that Twilight Council finishing on up. Looks like a Roach Warrior and +1 weapons going up for Dark here. And Trigger's going to be able to use those oracles that he's been able to keep alive this game and add on Blink.
I would love to get Trigger basically actually being able to perform some Blink action. Actually get to that point.
Move across the map for once, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Dark little supply blocked. A lot of supply blocked, actually. But it doesn't matter. We're going to point that out, and he's going to punch him in the face anyway. But he is setting up for a lot of roaches. That also is why we see an Overlord surpless, rather than just him being supply block.
Calculated supply block.
Yeah, exactly.
For the family man. He knows how to manage a large group.
I don't know the equivalent of the family man supply block is, but
yeah.
Having too many kids in the minivan.
Yeah, exactly. You know how to situate them all around.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously Trigger added on a Forge. He's also adding a Templar Archive, so they're going to have a whole lot of aggression early game coming out from him. Not really a huge temp of map control, just those oracles running around, getting ideas to what Dark is doing. And he's like, he was probably apprehensively waiting. He's like, okay, check. Add a Nidus from But now it is going to be Roach Hydra, and of course Dark can still get max or close to max on it and go for a big old attack. You should see Trigger able to show off some defensive moves, finally getting some offense too. Little miss micro, but 4 drones and an Oracle saves. 5th. Oh, it's out of Pulsar Beam.
Yeah, out of energy, but still going to be happy with a little bit of that damage and keeping that Oracle alive. As long as he's able to keep that alive, it's going to be extremely helpful in dealing with some of these Lings, even throwing a Revelation off on some of those Lings so we can find them with the Stalkers. Get a couple of extra pickoffs there. So I really feel like this is where Trigger can hit a little bit more of his stride. Not in that super early game defense. What I think of Trigger kind of hitting his stride is sort of more in that mid game where he's got that nice setup of a little bit of his tech. He's able to start putting on the pressure and doing his own aggression.
Well, it does look like he's going to be I mean, it's a very typical Protoss situation, right?
Yeah.
Blink might be available for a little more of like a moving forward, blinking backward situation, but other than that, it's going to be defending the Roach Hydra in multiple locations. But this is how you're tested as a Protoss. A lot of your versus games, Trigger just needs to actually know how he's going to be able to split. I don't believe he saw the incoming attack. The Oracles were elsewhere. The Stalkers moved as well. This is all of the static defense, not going to be set up yet. And really, very obnoxious delay, I would say, on that 4th phase. Everything being killed, not canceled as well.
Yeah, that is definitely going to be very annoying. I mean, that's almost the equivalent of a Nexus in terms of resources lost there. But big storm on a lot of the Roaches and the Hydras is going to push them back for now.
Yeah, Dark is not quite ready for the big swing of the hammer. That was a little taste of it. So Trigger, I would say fortunately he didn't lose the Nexus. I mean, you're right to point out how many minerals that was for sure, but at least it's not a complete restart, because if you can get like an overcharge there, then that would be good enough. But I do question if he'll get that shield battery up in time. Dark is preparing his 2-pronged attack. He is maxed out. Hydra speed about to finish as well, and Trigger is going to be feeling the pressure.
Yeah, a lot of his army is situated on that south side, not so much on the north side over by that 3rd base location. We're seeing the damage starting to come on forward. Shield battery overcharge is buying some time with that Zealot, just taking so much damage. The cannon taking so much damage. The Stalker's blinking in from behind, but the Stalkers are actually going to get caught by a lot of these Lings, and it feels like Trigger, where's the rest of his army? It's not coming in time.
No, he just doesn't have it. It's just, obviously we see a lot of those situations where ZVP is almost even the 80 supply difference, and the Protoss can hold, but it has to be so prepared. The storms have to be split and ready to slap on those chokes. Force field to buy some time, because you notice there's no Ravagers here. Obviously, shield batteries up against any fight you do take, and that didn't exist at all. So unfortunately, this is going to be a quick and easy 2-0 for Dark. Trigger's going to have to play a little more.
He will likely be going down to the lower bracket. Despite the incredible storms here, there's certainly just not enough Protoss units here for Trigger to really hold on. Even with the stasis trap coming on out, the Immortal is going to end up falling. The warping in units are going to end up falling, and Trigger is going to end up falling to Dark.
Yeah, Dark making this